Welcome to our Italian Summer Shorts, a short series from amongst Romans to help you travel smarter, deeper, and cooler this summer. One of my favorite things about living in Italy is being in proximity to so many ancient sites. I think I'm one of the few people who moved to Italy not for food, but for piles of rocks. For me, the beauty of Italy is it's not just about the Roman ruins. When we think of ancient Italy, I think we all tend to picture people walking in togas, the aqueducts, and Roman roads. Those are the things we associate with ancient Rome. But we also have to remember that Romans weren't the first civilization that lived and created here. Long before Romans rose to power, the Italian peninsula was home to many different cultures, some of them advanced, complex, and still shaping what we discovered today. The Etruscans were probably one of the most famous groups that we know that lived here before the Romans. The Etruscans were known for their art, tombs, and sophisticated cities, and they thrived in central Italy long before Rome came to be what we know today. In the south of Italy, there were Greek settlers who left a mark along the coast of Sicily and what they named Magna Graecia, which was the Great Greece. They left a whole bunch of buildings, temples, theaters, and schools. Even before both of them, there were Iron Age communities building necropolises, villages, and sacred sites that predate written history. These cultures didn't just disappear when Rome arrived. They influenced it. Today, archaeologists across Italy are still uncovering pieces of that past. And to me, that is fascinating. In this episode, I'll walk you through some of the most recent discoveries made this year and what makes them so fascinating. Let's start with who were the Etruscans. The Etruscans were one of the most powerful and mysterious cultures in pre-Roman Italy. They lived in central Italy, mainly in what's now Tuscany, Umbria, and northern Lazio regions. They flourished between 9th and 3rd centuries BCE. The Etruscans were known for building cities, they traded with the Greeks and the Phoenicians, and they developed a writing system that archaeologists and historians still can't fully understand today. They were skilled in metalwork, art, and engineering, but they also built elaborate tombs. Some of them were actually carved into the rock, which tells us a lot about their beliefs, social structure, and daily life. The Romans actually borrowed a lot from the Etruscans, including religious rituals, urban planning, and even parts of their alphabet. Eventually, Etruscan cities were absorbed into the growing Roman Republic, but their influence didn't just vanish. So many of the archaeological discoveries we hear about today, especially things like tombs and votives, are from this lost but fascinating civilization. Now, you might also wonder, why were there so many Greek colonies in Italy? That's a very good question. Starting around 8th century BCE, Greek settlers began arriving in southern Italy and Sicily. They came in waves. Sometimes they were escaping conflict, sometimes they were looking for trade and land. These cities, these colonies, were not just trading posts. Many of them were important cities. Places like Syracuse, Agrigento in Sicily, and Paestum here in Campania all had temples, theaters, agoras, and schools. These settlers brought with them not just architecture, but they brought philosophy, art, and winemaking techniques. And over time, these cities became powerful hubs of Greek culture, and their influence spread throughout the peninsula. So the Romans excelled at adapting concepts and ideas from other cultures and perfecting them. So they took a lot from the Etruscans and from the Greeks, and they just ran with it. So a lot of the stuff that we know about Roman Empire really had their roots in the Greek and Etruscan civilizations before them. So you might wonder, well, what does the Iron Age have to do with this? So the Iron Age covers a period roughly between 1000 BCE to 700 BCE. So that's way before the Etruscans and the Greeks really came and made a difference. This was a time of small tribal communities across the peninsula and northern Europe, and people here built villages, they used iron tools and weapons, And they actually started burying their dead in large cemeteries called necropolises. So these early societies didn't have written records, but we learn about them through their burial practices, pottery, and the tools they left behind. So many of the recent discoveries are helping archaeologists piece together what life was like in Italy before the urban culture took shape. Iron Age isn't tied to one particular civilization. I think it laid the groundwork for everything that came next, from Etruscan cities to Roman Empire. And it's really exciting to see that. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I'm not that excited about rocks and tools, but, I think just because Italian heritage is so rich, finding places like that is really quite fascinating. For someone like me who loves this kind of stuff, this really is amazing. Okay, so now let's get into what's been discovered in Italy so far. I feel like every year there's something new being uncovered in Italy. And, if you look at the discoveries over time, they're all pretty fascinating. But we're going to look at what's been discovered so far in 2025. One of the big discoveries has been the monumental Iron Age necropolis in Trento. So archaeologists uncovered more than 200 tombs from the Iron Age. Some of them are over 2,500 years old. That's pretty incredible. And these were not just simple graves, as many of them had objects buried with them. The dead were buried with things like tools, pottery, and even jewelry. And now in those tombs, we see that some people were cremated, others were buried whole. So again, if you're into this kind of stuff, this tells us very exciting things, that there were different traditions happening at the same time. Because, usually cultures have either one or the other tradition. So they either bury people or they cremate them. Here we see a combination of both. So what's incredible is that this was found under a modern building. And it shows you just how much of Italy's past is still hidden beneath the surface. So whenever you're walking around on the streets, you never know what's underneath your feet. There could be some really fascinating stuff. The next discovery is the pristine Etruscan tomb near Perugia. So Perugia is in central Italy, and here archaeologists found a perfectly preserved Etruscan tomb. The tomb had over 100 artifacts that were untouched, meaning they were not stolen. This is very rare because over time, most tombs have been looted and damaged. And this one was sealed. So we were able to, the archaeologists were able to uncover ceramics, bronze objects, and beautifully decorated belt. So this discovery offers a glimpse into burial practices and trade networks in central Italy before Roman dominance. This is very important because the quality of materials gives you a bit of a insight into what was happening in the peninsula at that time. Another big discovery is in Agrigento. So Agrigento is in Sicily, and there is a big archaeological site called Valley of the Temples, which is fabulous. If you ever go to Sicily, I absolutely recommend going to Agrigento. I'm a bit disappointed that this discovery was made after we've been there. So what they discovered is a Greek gymnasium. A gymnasium is not quite the same as the gym we think of today. In ancient Greek cities, a gymnasium was where young men trained. They trained physically, intellectually, and philosophically. It was a place where they could expand their minds and well-being. This one had a running track and a small pool. So again, this isn't just a reminder that Sicily was influenced by the Greeks, but it was Greek in many different ways. So cities like Agrigento, who were part of Magna Graecia, were part of that network of Greek colonies. These discoveries are examples of Greek urban planning and culture in southern Italy. So if you want to learn more about Greek culture, there's also Paestum here in Campania, which has fantastic Greek temples that I think are one of the best preserved outside of Greece, and they are fascinating to see. I really recommend going there. Now, the next discovery has been in Pompeii. I feel like there's been a lot of things being discovered in Pompeii. It's like a gift that just keeps on giving. They always seem to be discovering something because there's still about a third of the city that hasn't been uncovered. So there's opportunities to find new things. What they discovered were frescoes inspired by the cult of Dionysus and House of Theasis. What makes this so exciting is the scale of the frescoes. These frescoes are life-sized, known as megalography. It's like what you see at the famous Villa of Mysteries. It likely depicts a private religious association with Dionysus. Dionysus was the god of sort of like party guy, right? He was all about wine and debauchery, and he had all these followers, and they always had these big orgies, and it was like this big, big party type of thing. So again, these were secret symbolic ceremonies, and they were completely separate from Rome's public temples and festivals. They were private in someone's home. The fact that we're still finding scenes like that shows us just how much of ancient spiritual life happened behind closed doors. Now, like I mentioned, there's a bunch of things being discovered in Pompeii, and we were there in January and April or May. Not all of them are open, but if you ask someone when you get to Pompeii, if you're coming this summer, they might be open, at least some of them. So just ask them where the latest discoveries and they will direct you. There's lots of different things that are being found and they're quite fascinating. If you're going to Pompeii, I highly recommend you ask someone, or if you're doing a guided tour, your guide will likely take you to those places if they're open. Another discovery is a submerged villa at Lake Fusaro. Lake Fusaro is also not far from Naples. A Roman villa suddenly emerged from the water, and this is thanks to the shifting coastline. So the shifting coastline is part of the volcanic activity. The area is known as Phlegraean Fields, and it has long been a place where the land rises and sinks slowly over time, and they call this phenomenon bradyism. So this bradyism sometimes will reveal things that we didn't know, like this villa. So for now, the aerial scans reveal walls, room, and possibly thermal baths. So this was probably part of a luxury estate, not a village. This was someone's big house. The last discovery I want to talk about is a small Roman town of Interamna Lyrenias. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, but my Latin is not very good. So this town lies between Rome and Naples, and the archaeological site has been open for quite some time. However, there's been new discoveries that are changing how archaeologists are looking at the site. In the past, many of them felt that this was a bit of a backwater, small place, not much happening. However, they have discovered new things that are changing that perception. So what are those? There's a roofed theater, warehouses, and a public bath complex. All of these things reveal it was actually a lively, well-organized town that thrived into the 3rd century. I think they even were saying that Julius Caesar might have visited there. So again, it's not just like a little small backwater. It's a bit of a town that probably was more prominent than we thought originally. Not every site is as grand as Rome or Pompeii, but towns like this help us understand how ordinary Romans lived and built communities. There's more to ancient Rome than just Rome, Pompeii, and the ruins around it. So there's a lot more to see. So now you might be thinking, can I actually see these places? The answer is sometimes yes and sometimes no. Some sites will take years to open to the public, while others might stay under study or behind museum glass. But this is still why you should care. These discoveries are living proof that Italy's ancient past is still very much alive and right under your feet. You could be walking down a modern street or visiting a sleepy countryside town, and just below the surface, there could be thousands of years of history that is still waiting to be uncovered. To me, that is just fascinating, and that's one of the best things I love about Italy. So these discoveries are fascinating because they reveal what people believed. They show us how they lived, what they built, and how closely the ancient cultures were interconnected. Italy has such a fantastic and incredibly interesting history. You have all these different cultures that, came and went, and finding traces of them all is simply amazing. So to me, that's the part of what makes traveling to Italy so memorable. Every corner, every ruin, every hilltop town is a part of a much bigger story. And that's a story that's still being written one excavation at a time.